Hey there, you're listening to Not Another TV podcast. This is episode 65, the week of November 9th, 2024. My name's Drew Koenig. With me, as always, my co-host, Mads Versassi. Mads, how we doing?
Hey, how's it going? It's been a little while.
It has. Real time, it has been 2 weeks since our last recording. And things have occurred. I typically keep it pretty...
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I typically keep it pretty light and upbeat at the top here. You know, throwing some zingers or bits. I don't feel like doing that this week. Even that laugh felt wrong. Even that laugh felt weird. Yeah. It has. I'm sure everyone listening knows this already, and is aware of this. And if you don't, you probably shouldn't be listening to this podcast, honestly. But it has been a rough few days. Again, as I'm sure everyone is aware of what the election looked like, and it is very, very bad. And I don't feel like sugarcoating that for anyone. It is extremely bad. Things are going to get very bad, and I don't have. There's a lot of people right now who have uplifting words of advice of what to do. I do not possess that.
I'm also not someone that is able to reach anger and fight yet.
I have fight. My anger is more despair.
Yeah.
Not quite despair.
I just can't do either yet.
Here's the problem with fight. There aren't many options available to us. 8 years ago, there were things that we could do. Things that we could, even when things looked bad, even when they seemed like they were going to be bad, there were certain guardrails and safeguards.
They kept us hopeful.
There were certain things that we could do, like call your senator, and you should still call your senator, and you should still call senators in general, and you should don't let Robert F. Kennedy Jr. become the head of the Health and Human Services. Like, you should absolutely do
God,
that.
please don't.
If you know, but it would be hard to overstate just how devastating and catastrophic Project 2025 is going to be. Our only saving grace is that it is an uneasy coalition of people who do not historically work well together. And that alchemy of chaos might end up working in our favor, but that is the only thing we can honestly count on. A lot of the people who worked against Trump last time just aren't there, even like in his inner circle. So things are bad. I don't know what to tell people to do right now. I don't know what to tell myself to do right now. I would say this is not an option that's going to be available to a lot of people. This won't be a possibility. I get that. It's a lot of disabled people who are not going to be able to do this. But I think the best piece of advice that I can tell people is to be prepared and be ready. There might come a time in the next 6 months to a year where staying in this country will not be feasible or tenable. I think people, if you are able, should be saving money and making sure your passport is up to date. And be thinking about what a plan B looks like for you. Again, there's a lot of people who this is not an option. Disabled people don't have the option of going somewhere. But there's
and I have diabetes, which is a chronic illness, and most countries will turn away people with medical conditions like that.
Yeah. Like, at the very least,
but
if you live in a blue state, stay in your blue state, probably. leaving the country if that's not an
But
option.
still be cautiously
Because
aware because no state was a landslide. Um,
exactly, and
but yeah, I'm fairly safe in New Jersey, so
I live in a decidedly red state. Even I live in Ohio. That's a red state. Kentucky is also a red state. Just below me, things go really bad. It's hard to say.
yeah.
um, I am still even like I don't want to get too like doomsaying, even though this is bad. I am still, if I need to be, kind of cis and straight appearing if I truly needed to be. So as a form of camouflage, if that day comes, I am not as bad off as some other people will be. You know,
Yeah.
like if I need to, I can put that
Yep.
camouflage. Um,
I can definitely pass as female should I need to.
yeah, I can certainly pass as cis and straight. Should that be required? I don't want that to be required. But there's a lot of other things, which I don't think we need to really delve into. There's a lot of really good resources for people to uh, use currently before Trump gets into office. Certainly encourage people to seek out and see what you can do before anything truly bad begins to happen.
If nothing else, lean on your community.
Learn a community, build a community if you have to. And that's the hard part. That's the work. That's the fight. But for now, I am not on Twitter anymore. Like many people, I've been off for several days and moved to Blue Sky, and that has been very soothing.
Yeah. It's so fun and exciting again being on Blue Sky
It is very
because I
nice.
was like interacting with fandom things and it was all positive and it was nice. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to enjoy this while it lasts.
Hmm. Yeah, there aren't very many bad actors that have migrated over currently. Um, it's good because it's a site that encourages and really makes good use of its blocking.
Yeah.
Um, is a site meant to for you to block people. It's a site meant for you to curate your experience, and that makes it very very nice. I'm enjoying it a lot. Um, I switched over a year ago, but it was kind of off and on. I have been really enjoying the last few days. I will enjoy it more when. Right now, we're very much in a political. Here's what we can do headspace on Blue Sky, and I'm eager for the TV criticism bubble to kind of form, which it's still kind of doing.
Hmm.
Um, so right now it's good and soothing, but I'm waiting for like the kind of curated like Twitter bubble to kind of form, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like going through stuff on Blue Sky, it's like, oh, this is very nice. This is very reassuring. But yeah, it's been yeah. Goes without saying, it has been a rough week. I did not sleep on Tuesday night. Like I slept like 2 hours on Tuesday.
I did sleep on Tuesday, but that's just because my body was so exhausted from the weekend before that it finally just crashed.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess that is one way of kicking off our news. That was the first big part. Uh, yeah, yeah. In other news, it feels even wrong to transition from that, but here we go. Um, Also in this week, Tony Todd passed away, who's a very
Yep.
prolific and storied actor. As for TV, notably guest starred on Star Trek Deep Space Nine as adult Jake Sisko in one of TV's best episodes. Um, And Tony Todd, even when he was like a good guy, even when he was playing a good guy, he was a guy. He kind of exists in like that Tim Curry space of like every time he shows up, you're like, that's a
Hmm.
motherfucker, you know, like that's a sketchy
Yep.
ass. That's a sketchy man right there. Which
Right.
he was able to tap into so wonderfully, like with Candyman or the Final Destination movies. That was Tony Todd, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
It was
um,
indeed.
it was. Yeah, and yeah, just like and a lot of his like voice acting as well. And it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
he was a scary motherfucker, you know.
I like to believe that he saw what was happening and said, "Nope, I'm out."
But yeah, yeah. In other news, there's a report that came out this week that with Arcane coming back, and we will be talking about that next week, um, which I'm very excited for. I haven't watched the new episodes yet, and it's kind of just sitting there waiting for me. It's like a treat that I'll give
It's okay.
myself.
I haven't either.
I've seen some things online about it. Some things have already been spoiled, but it's like I'm still very, very eager and excited. But there's a report that came out this week that said that each season of Arcane has cost $250 million. Um, which, as one person I saw put it, Arcane is probably the only movie or TV show where you can talk about its budget and everyone will go, "Yeah, that makes sense." Like you watch Arcane and you're like, "Yeah, that animation is very very expensive."
Yep. It's stellar animation.
Yeah, yeah. It was also announced, and I think even accidentally so, that Andor is coming back in April for its
Hmm.
second and final season, which is very very exciting. And that April is very intriguing release schedule. A very interesting release date for that. If let me say this, if Andor was coming out in March, I would say Disney is 100% confident in this. They have a masterpiece that's going to be up for Emmy consideration. April's still
Yep.
within that bubble, so I'm still like, I think they're like 90% confident in Andor, and that it's a very good thing. Um, it's like just that little, just those, you know, 2 or 3 weeks
I
off.
think they're just nervous because the last couple Star Wars projects have been very mixed. And so I think they're like, just to be safe.
Yeah, they're like, we probably have a banger on our hands that'll get Emmy consideration, but and it probably will get Emmy consideration, and it will probably be great. But I did find that rather intriguing. Uh, that is all of our news for this week. Let's move on into the GOAT. So the GOAT is a weekly segment we do here on the podcast where myself and Mads nominate a best TV character or episode of all time and pit them against each other on a poll on Tumblr, TikTok, Instagram, and I guess Blue Sky now.
Yep.
I don't think Blue Sky has a poll functionality, but we'll figure it out.
Not yet, but hey.
So in the interest of full transparency here, originally our theme for this week was going to be politics in honor of the Diplomat coming out on Netflix, and then the world happened. Um, and if we're being
Yep.
entirely honest, I think that was a theme that we came up with when we thought Kamala Harris was going to win, and then she didn't.
Yep.
and then it felt weird. So there is no theme for this week because I could not be bothered to think of one after that fell through. So we are themeless again. Yeah, so this is a kind of free for all. We're just going with anything this week. So Mads, hit me with your pick for the goat.
All right. So, because the world went to shit this week, I went back to the early days of 911 and rewatched my favorite 2 episode arc. But I'm only going to talk about the second half of that 2 episode arc because that's the best part of it. And I'm nominating 911 season 3, episode 3, The Searchers. And this is the second half of the tsunami storyline. Yes, you heard that correctly. Santa Monica Pier gets hit with a tsunami in season 3 of 911.
Hmm.
And Buck happens to be on the pier with Eddie's son Christopher at the time, and they get caught up in the tsunami. Meanwhile, the rest of the 118 are working to help save people from the tsunami. The reason Buck's not with his team is because he previously was injured on the job and he's on blood thinners, so he can't come back to work until he's off the blood thinners. So he went to the pier with Christopher to have a nice, fun day. And lo and behold, a tsunami comes along and they get caught up in it. And Buck gets separated from Christopher. And for majority of the episode, he's trying to find this little boy. And it's so devastating, and it was one of the first times this show really managed to hit that emotionality needed from a good drama. And we truly didn't know if the show was going to go there and kill a child. um Spoiler alert, they do not. The child does get found, pretty much perfectly fine, but there's also the emotional weight of just the sheer devastation that the rest of the 118 deal with, and how Eddie is going along saying to himself, at least my son is safe. He is not here, being in the middle of the tsunami, only to find out that in fact his son had been in the tsunami all along and that his son was missing. And so for like 2 seconds, you see his heart break. And then Christopher shows up with someone that had found him. And it's just a really well balanced episode. I think it's the best episode they've ever done on the show up to this point. We're 8 seasons in. Um, but yeah, season 3, episode 3, The Searchers, is my absolute favorite 911 episode. They get all the elements correct, so that's my nomination.
Nice. I'm not sure that's how. Is that how tsunamis work? I don't know. Um, Tsunami plus LA. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know what causes tsunamis, but I didn't think tsunamis could happen in LA, but maybe they can. I don't know. Shh, it's television, Drew. Just go with it.
So, I mentioned Andor earlier, and I've been thinking about Andor a lot this week. As you know, the everything happened. Um, a show was yes a part of Star Wars and yes part of the the canon, and had elements of hope and had these a lot of the grounding parts of rebellion, but so much about like the work and the hard work and the part of rebellion that doesn't make like a fun Star Wars movie.
Hmm.
And a show that was really able to capture like yes that fight, yes that hope, but also kind of the hopelessness along with that, and also like just the pushback and the here's a look at the system that the empire established. And so my pick for this week, was really Andor firing on all cylinders and was like, oh, here's what the show is, and here's what it is really capable of doing. Is season 1, episode 10, entitled "One Way Out." So this was part of Andor's the culmination of its 4-episode arc of Cassian getting arrested and thrown in a prison and trying to find his way out, along with you know the help of Kino Loy, played by Andy Serkis, who was just giving an all-time performance throughout this entire episode, and like the culmination from like those first 3 episodes, um, 7, 8, 9, of Kino becoming more and more radicalized and being more willing to do something, uh, to the point of One Way Out, where he's making this really impassioned, bold speech that everyone in prison should rise up and fight and make a prison break. And just for that final moment of Andy Serkis on the platform, just going, "I can't swim," as everyone's jumping off into the water, is so haunting and so powerful. And there is that moment of like, oh, this is why the Empire chose him to like keep everyone in line, because everyone knows he cannot swim, and it's deeply upsetting. And then on top of that, you have like all the stuff with Mon Mothma. It's just like those machinations being so good, yeah, and just like it's all of this like of a piece, and it's like this is what it means to resist, and it's what it means to rebel, and there are like sacrifices upon sacrifices that you have to make, and it isn't pretty and it isn't fun. It's not the action packed pew pew shit. There's pain, and there's it's all bodies built upon bodies, and that's what it means to that's what a rebellion means, like in a true sense of the word. That's what that is. And I've been thinking a lot about like that in Andor, especially like I went back to this episode. So yeah, that is Andor season 1, episode 10, One Way Out.
Nice.
So you can vote for both of these on Tumblr, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky, and be sure to like and share it on all your platforms. Next week, in honor of Silo coming back, we will be talking about post-apocalypse. Sikorsky might be a little too close, but well, we're doing it anyway. So, fun times.
It's a little tongue in cheek, but
This will be great. Let's move on into the main part of our show. So, to kick us off this week, normally we would be talking about Dimension 20. It is a big season finale, so we will be holding that off till next week. But in lieu of that, we'll be kicking off with Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 5, Episode 4, A Farewell to Farms. And since it has been a couple weeks, let's talk about Episode 3 briefly, which does the bold thing of remembering that Mariner had a girlfriend.
Which I didn't know about, so I was just like, what?
Let me explain. I want to put this into the appropriate context for you. So, season 3, Mariner starts dating Jennifer, and they're very cute. The end of the season, thing happens. They're in a fight. They leave each other on like not good terms. Season 4, Jennifer is nowhere to be found. Not once. And everyone goes, "Oh, they must have broken up off screen," which is a massive bummer because it was our only queer rep on the show. Really.
Right.
But we're like, okay, That sucks, but okay. They broke up. And I
Right.
legitimately thought they forgot about Jennifer, which I do think is cemented by them just going, "Oh right, Jennifer," in this episode. There's like we forgot to actually do anything about that, right? And they do a fair enough retcon of that. Um, it's a little squishy. It's not very
Yeah.
elegant, and I don't know. I, and it does kind of feel like character assassination, like character assassinating their relationship. It's like, no,
Hmm.
they were cute and good together. Let Mariner have another girlfriend.
Even in this episode, they definitely have chemistry. Like,
Yeah, it's nuts. Although I think Mariner, this is the thing of like, I think Tawny Newsom could have chemistry with a block of wood.
you do speak truth.
You are right. They have great chemistry.
Wait, is this also the one where Boimler gets taken on the mission with what's his
Oh,
face?
oh yeah, yes, yes. Where Ransom takes him on the mission, just keeps having him,
Yeah, Ransom, that's his name.
just has him keep doing
And
increasingly
he's like
dangerous things.
terrified he's gonna get hurt. I'm like, not for nothing, he's got a valid, that's a very valid fear.
Yeah, like Ransom, go do the dangerous. You go do the dangerous thing. But I mean, like that is a power imbalance. Like if you're,
Yeah.
it is like that red shirt thing of like you go fight the dangerous or like go out there and do the dangerous thing, and then they die, and it's like, well, what did you think was like? Honestly, what did we think was going to happen? But yeah, that is a very fun subplot. Also, I do want to say really quick, I did really enjoy the the nanite turning into a giant like D20, or what would that be, like a D like a D100,
Yes. Yeah.
D1000. Very good.
So I love that why am I blanking on character names tonight? My goodness. Tilling is like who doesn't ever show liking pretty much anything, is like gaga over this musician.
Oh yeah, yeah. For Talin, that was a a Taylor Swift moment. You know, like
Hmm.
like for her, that is the level of enthusiasm that she's she's like, this is the best moment of my life. I just love the way that Gabrielle Ruiz plays with deadpan. It's really good. Yeah, it's so good. But this week's episode, A Farewell to
This week's
Farms.
episode.
Um, it's fine. It's very enjoyable. I like being back with the Klingons.
Hmm.
Like the Klingons are such an easy race to kind of like lampoon because
Hmm.
they're already so ridiculous. Like they're already so heightened.
It was nice to kind of like check in with Klingons after the very intense first few episodes we've had this season. It's like, okay, we're gonna take a breather. Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how much of a nerd Boimler is for Klingon shit. He's just so game. Like he's
Yeah.
just so amped and ready for all of this.
I mean, he's valid.
Yes, yes, yep. The B plot with the whatever they're called, the bird people species, it's fine.
Oh yeah.
Like I don't know. There's not a lot there. It's like, oh, I don't know. There's something um annoying about like the critics don't have any sense of taste. And it's like, okay, I get it, but we've done this before. Like we've seen this a lot. You know, like, oh, the critics who are like really hypercritical uh, don't know what they're talking about. It's
Yep.
like, okay, yeah, it's fine. I'm not taking this personally, but also it's really rote. Let's move on to our next show. What We Do in the Shadows, season 6, episode 5, entitled Nandor's Army. I do have to say really quickly, we didn't touch on this with Lower Decks, but I am really tickled that we got two like Apocalypse Now episodes.
Yes.
It's really funny. But yeah, Nandor's Army is really good. It doesn't like when I initially heard like what this episode was about, I was like, okay, so we're doing a lot of the things that like What We Do in the Shadows has already done before. You know, both like a character running
Hmm.
off somewhere else and doing something wacky, with like the Jackie Daytona episode, or um, Nandor losing his mind, which the episode where like he tried to join a cult. It's
Right.
like, so we're just kind of doing both of those things, but Nandor's army feels really distinct from anything that the show has really done before. Um, and yeah, I think it creates some really nice dividends. And just like the progression, the progression of this episode, and the way that everyone responds to Nandor having lost his mind, and then like seeing like how far gone Nandor is from like the his mannequin army, his mannequin council, to, oh no, he had a real army. There's real people following him. And then the episode just being like one really big excuse to have like a basically a post breakup conversation between uh, Nandor and Guillermo.
Yep. Which I really, really like that. I'm glad that they finally sit down and hash it out.
Mm, yeah.
Um, I think it was well done. I think the writing was subtle enough to satisfy multiple types of fans. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I really enjoyed that part of the episode.
Yes, and I think they both do it really well. Like I think specifically, I think both of those actors, and it's like it's simple things of like you can kind of see like the switch in Nandor where it's like, oh, I'm taking this seriously. All of this has kind of been a lark, but this is the moment like I am taking this seriously. I love Colin Robinson being just immediately game.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very good, and
I
last,
mean,
yeah,
Colin Robinson needs something to do.
he does. I think he's just bored, and then Laszlo and Nadja just having like their own like weird relationship talk. Like anytime the show does
So,
does like Laszlo's actually deeply, deeply stupid, it's really funny.
mhm. if if they ever had a normal conversation, I would probably combust because there's nothing average about anything they ever say to each other.
It's really good. Yeah. And then like that closing button where like Nandor did have an army is just really funny. And just Nandor being like, "You all just go on doing what you're doing." The army's like, "Okay, but like specifically, what is that?" Yeah, it's really really well done. Uh,
it 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 remains canon that Nandor has grand ideas but sucks at executing them.
let's move on to our next show, Matlock, season 1, episode 5, entitled Claws. Um, so what did we think of this episode?
I loved this episode.
It's very good.
Um, I really liked how Kathy Bates really nailed the nuanced performances of Maddie in this episode because we're starting to see a few cracks, right? And we kind of hold our breath at one point when she yells out about dignity and respect on whether or not that crack is going to be noticed by Olympia, and it really doesn't, which
Mhm.
I'm kind of surprised, but maybe that'll come back. But yeah, that moment especially, I was just like, this is why Kathy Bates is an award winning actress.
Yeah,
And also, I just feel like Julian is too nice.
he is really nice. I feel like in the show's search of like who hid the documents, it can only be Junior or Senior because yet the show
Right.
wants us to like Olympia. Like it wants us to be on her side and wants us to have like both us to have camaraderie with Olympia and for Maddie to have it with her.
Yeah. And I said in my review of this episode that I was like, Julian's niceness rubs me the wrong way because I feel like it's performative niceness. Because I'm like, you're trying to tell me that this is a bitter divorce, but he's being super nice. Like something's not adding up. Um, but also like, I just want Jason Ritter to play a bad guy. I want him to show the world that he can do that niceness and turn around and be a ruthless asshole.
Mhm. Yeah, see, that's the thing that's getting me because they've never, not exactly been hostile with each other. Um, but there is
Hmm.
a level of niceness here where it's like you're being extremely cordial, and I think
Yeah.
it's the fact it might be a writing problem for me of like you're being very nice and Olympia isn't like turned off by that. Like she doesn't think she is not behaving
Hmm.
as someone who thinks this is odd. So we might have caught like a a bad patch, and now they're past it, and he's nice, and this is who he has always been. But if this is who he has always, why are you getting divorced? And the show seems really the show seems really unwilling to address or answer that uh, question. So I think that is like a lot of the shakiness there of like we don't know why they got divorced. We can't understand why they're behaving the way they have been behaving.
I'm also questioning Julian's behavior because I'm like, okay, this is like one of the top law firms, right? And yes, he is Senior's son, but I feel like Senior wouldn't have let him be as high up and high ranking as he is if he wasn't good at what he does. So to me, he seems way too nice to have been a really, really cutthroat good lawyer that this firm is being implied to be like,
Hmm.
right? Like it's very heavily implied that some of those cases they're very ruthless and horrible and mean. Like the episode last week, we kind of see that with the man who's, you know, getting a wrongful death lawsuit against his wife. Um, we see Senior act very ruthless and uncaring. And so I'm like starting to question if Julian really is this nice guy or if this is all just an act to throw us off.
Right, because we've seen the suspicions against Olympia, um, who at this point does not seem like the kind of who has enough scruples to seem like she wouldn't have done this. Um, and then we have Senior, who we are suspicious of, and is a Republican. And like, there's a lot of shorthand there, but that's fine. And Junior is the only one where it's like we don't know anything about him. We don't know what he's about. We don't know, like we haven't seen him try any cases or the way he
Nope.
tries cases. So there's a big like question mark around him. Not even just a question mark, but there's just a lot of like just like kind of dead area around him. where it's like we don't know anything really about this
Yeah.
man. And it goes back to my earlier point of like we don't know why they got divorced. We don't know what they're doing. Like what's the plan now?
Yeah. And I'm at this point in the show, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they're setting something up. You know, they're purposely making us question him and then they're going to give more information. But we'll see if that's just a writer's weakness or if it really is like a specific plan in place.
Hmm. Also on top of this, I really enjoy Leah Lewis in these past couple episodes,
Yes.
especially like the very casual coming out that she had last episode. Um, at least to like
And then
us, the audience.
the cutesy nervousness around Kira in this episode.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Akira played. She's so enjoyable. She's so cute. Played by Piper Curda, who I saw in like the last season of Legacies, and she's very enjoyable there, and I really enjoy seeing her here. But God, like her just like endless gay panic um, throughout this episode is so good.
Mhm.
It's so funny.
It's so fun.
I do love the realization that like pretty much everyone has of like, oh, she's not single because she wants to be single. She's single because she has no game whatsoever.
Mhm.
Oh no. And I think one final thing is the show has absolutely no idea what to do with the grandson.
No, it doesn't. They finally kind of figured out what to do with the husband. At least they've done that. But the grandson is still this big unnecessary element that just makes things a mess.
They're like the show is in constant conflict of we should include the kid because he's a part of the show, but also we can't ethically involve a child in this who should just be at school. Um, so it really just doesn't know what to do with that character.
But I will say her trying to figure out and navigate technology on her own without him was hilarious.
Yeah, and like I think that is the like case to be made for like why the grandson should not be here. Um, and probably shouldn't even be a character because it's like it's so much more funny for Maddie to just like stumble her way through this.
Yeah.
Like anytime there's a technical issue, it's like, oh,
And also she could be, on the side helping Sarah with her love life.
exactly, exactly. So let's move on to our next show, Ghosts, season 4, episode 4, entitled "The Work Retreat." This is a very fun episode, and it's
It is.
you know if we talk about a character that a show doesn't always know what to do with, the husband is in such a weird position on this show, just kind of continuously of
Hmm.
he can't see the ghost and he can't interact with the ghost, but he has to be involved and has to like be able to make jokes. So it's always the struggle of like, how do we insert Jay into this where like he's still like a functioning member and still like a dynamic character on the show, but still stay true to the fact that like he cannot see these people. um,
Right.
and this is a really good workaround for Jay to just pretend that he's Trevor,
Yep.
and it works really well.
The controlled chaos of it all is just so funny.
Yes, although I don't think I don't think I fully buy that Trevor was able to um, do all of this on it. Like the show has done this a lot of times, where it's like, oh, Trevor secretly did this on a computer or a tablet. And it's like, okay, I can suspend some disbelief, even though we have seen Trevor try to use his power on computers, and it takes an hour.
Right.
We're like, okay, I don't know that I fully buy that Trevor was able to do this, but I'm willing to go along with this. And I'm also willing to buy it in the same episode where we have a lot of discussion of Pete using his powers and is able to get around, I don't know, part of his power must be also to teleport. Because that's the only way that that makes sense. Because the show is implying that Pete is able to get around very quickly. And I just don't know how that's possible.
I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't like, unless Pete is like just continuously hitching rides, which is possible. Um, I can't wrap my head around like the Budapest joke. It was just a joke. It's funny. If Pete literally went to
Hmm.
Budapest, then
Right.
I have some level of incredulity, you know. But okay, that aside, okay, fine. Also, I do want to say this real quick. I don't think it's a problem that Pete's girlfriend killed her husband for Pete.
Nah.
For the husband, that was bad. For Pete, you're already dead. What can she do to you?
Right. Right.
It's fine.
I mean, I'm sure it's not comfortable, quote unquote, dying again.
Yeah, yeah. But it's whatever.
Just got a
um,
little off the track.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a really fun kind of driving plot. I think it's pretty well done. I like the way that Jay handles himself in this episode. Um, and yeah, if you like, Trevor is funny in the context of his character, you know,
Hmm.
and like our understanding of the time that he came from. But talking to Trevor today
Right.
would be a nightmare.
And it doesn't surprise me that basic white corporate people find him to be someone to look up to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I think all of that works really well. And I did really like I can't remember who said it, but the joke of like, so she's harassing him. I guess that's progress.
Hmm.
It's just
Yes.
funny. Also, um, we Isaac, my bud, my guy, my brother in Christ. Um,
He is going through it.
we got to have a talk about the hair. I just, I don't know,
Oh, come
man.
on, Drew.
Like this, this is like the Isaac version of um, a woman going through a breakup and cutting her bangs. Like, I just,
Hmm.
it's just bad. It's really, it's not just bad. It's also alarming. And that hair, I just can't deal with the hair. It's really upsetting, and I like how everyone is instantly upset by it.
Yeah.
I did love Sam's line of like, "Oh, Isaac is doing something."
Yeah, I didn't hate the hair. I found it very comical.
Yes. But the driving force of the B plot of Hetty and Sass sometimes just get really bored and make up rumors about people is so mm,
Oh
it's
my god,
it's so
yes.
perfect. It's so
And then they tell Thor, and Thor literally stands at the window and just yells it across the yard.
just outstanding. Oof,
And we're like, this is how rumors start.
indeed. Although I I don't think that I buy that Nancy knows ghosts in other buildings and talks to them ever.
Yeah.
This is perhaps the part where they lose me.
Hmm.
Pete's nonsense power, okay. Nancy knowing other ghosts in other buildings, no. This is where I draw the line.
Right. Nancy doesn't leave the basement except to come into the sitting room. Like, she doesn't go anywhere.
No, yeah. This is my. We all have a line. This is mine. But God, I love that. I love that Hetty and Sass made not only one rumor, but also a backup rumor in case the first rumor didn't take off. It's just really funny.
I missed that, so that's even funnier.
Let's move on to our next show. Abbott Elementary, Season 4, Episode 5, entitled Dad Fight. And the thing I love about this
Yes.
episode is that it's not about an issue, it's not about anything big. It's simply about a parent wants to fight Gregory, and Gregory doesn't want to. That's it.
Right.
That's the episode.
Yep.
Um, it's so, like there's something so delightfully sitcom about it, where it's like we have a very simple premise. Here's the premise: a parent wants to fight Gregory. Gregory doesn't want to. Go, and it worked really well, just because of how steadfast Gregory is in his like stubborn refusal to partake in this. Um,
Right. Because this is, aside from touching other people's germs, this is probably the second most terrifying thing for Gregory.
right, right.
He's like, physical violence? No, thank you.
No, thank you. I'm not doing that. So it's just a really there's a kind of elegance in its simplicity. It's just a really well done episode with just a lot of really fun like runners throughout of like Melissa messed up her leg and doesn't want to go to the hospital. uh, as someone who put off going to the hospital for many days a couple weeks ago, I felt that, really felt that. I'm like,
Yeah.
not going to the hospital, I'm fine.
Not only that, it's a very big statement on the state of our healthcare system
Right, yeah.
and people's ability to think rationally about going to a doctor when they get hurt.
Hmm. And then uh Janine just having like this silent pettiness of Barbara owing her $5.
Hmm. Oh my god. I didn't think I could love Janine anymore until she comes out with this. Well, she owes me $5. I'm like, girl, I am like that. I understand you. And I'll be as passive aggressive about it sometimes that I'm like, do you not realize I'm upset that you haven't paid me back my money? Like,
And see, this is incompatible with my personality because while I am profoundly broke, truly and profoundly broke, I would rather die than mention to someone that they owe me money. $5, fine.
yeah.
I would just let them have $5. Honestly, but yeah, and like all of these together just works really, really well. And I guess the show adopted Tyreek at this point.
Yes.
Tyreek is just like the wild card that they can just throw to now.
Mhm.
Like I remember like Scrubs had an episode that was like just about this of like the characters that you can cut to for like just like a really fun and easy joke. Just like those really
Yes.
dependable like side,
That is definitely Tyreek.
yeah, like B or C characters. And yeah, that's just Tyreek at this point. Like that's just someone we can put in here, and it's like, yeah, that's really funny. Let's move on to our next show. Found season 2, episode 6, entitled "Missing While Gabby Mosley." And I would like to say this at the top here: if the show is positioning a redemption arc for Sir, I am not having it.
No, I hope not, because excuse me, no, that man does not deserve that. Do not give that to him.
No, yeah, absolutely not.
I will say once again, I keep forgetting that Dawn has a husband.
Right. That was my big problem this
And then we have
episode.
a whole episode where his husband is very prominent.
Yeah, no, that was my big problem this episode of like you can't just bring Don's husband back in here. Like he hasn't been gone for half the season. Like
Yeah.
honestly. And like not even
Ugh.
address where he's
But I
been.
have a feeling they're I also have a feeling like it's further showing the distance between them, and I do think at the end of this episode it's very clear that the husband is upset that Dawn doesn't talk to him about things,
Mhm.
or that he's not first in Dawn's life, and I'm just like, oh yeah, they're gonna break up.
Yeah, probably. But like that is not a, I don't know, that's not a relationship that we are invested in.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't really care. I'm just like, no, they're gonna break up.
yeah, yeah. It's like when this is like the first time we see that man all season, and we saw him like he probably
Hmm.
showed up 4 times last season. Like
Yeah.
I have no attachment to that man. Yeah, I am kind of frustrated with the show right now because I feel like there's a lot of characters that I feel like it just doesn't know what to do with right now. Like especially Margaret. I have no idea what the fuck they're doing with Margaret. In a season where she has
Right.
been so annoying to now go this.
And so inconsistent too. Like there are moments where it's clear, okay, she's angry still at Gabby. But then you turn around and she's very cordial and very collaborative with her. And it seems like the old Margaret is back. And then 2 seconds later, here's this new, I don't want to say it like this, but unstable Margaret. And that's what this episode shows because, she gets arrested. She has a restraining order because she hit this guy at the bus terminal. And it's like, what are they doing with this character?
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, it just feels like really shoddy writing, and like like I don't know what they're doing with Trent. Like
Hmm.
arrest arrest Gabby or don't. Like at this point, arrest her or drop this plot line.
And the whole thing with Zeke where he tells um Don that he's like, Trent's creating a case against you too, and I'm just like, okay, then why haven't we heard about this? Like, what
Yeah,
are you doing, Trent? Like, what's taking you so long? It's not like this information's hard to find.
yeah, and also what case? Like what case do you have? Like honestly, I am starting to feel like the same frustration from the show that we had like last season of like what is this show
Yeah,
doing?
it has good moments, but so much is so inconsistent that I'm like, I don't really know what this show is trying to do.
Yeah, and also the show has to stop with the Gabby flashbacks. Like
Hmm.
a little goes a long way. Like
Right.
it was good while Gabby was missing. I don't need to. The show doesn't
You
need
mean
to.
Lacey?
Yeah, Lacey. Thank you. Um, the show does not. Well, it's also Gabby, but the show does not need to.
But Lacey was missing
Lacey
that
was
guy.
missing, yeah. The show does not need to continuously go to this well.
No.
Unless we're building to something, and if you're building to something, you're really showing your hand. You know?
The other issue I'm having is that, like, okay, you showed me this little moment from the past. That is like the barest connection to the current storyline that you could ever come up with. Why did we just waste 10 minutes on this?
Right. Yeah.
Um, it's unnecessary.
Yeah, and it's weird to like cut from that to modern day Lacey, who, and I mean this in all sincerity, feels like she is having a manic depressive episode.
Yep.
So it's just really discordant.
I'm glad that she finally asked for help though. Like I'm like, all right, good job, girl. Like you needed to have asked for help.
Oh yeah, and like that was the thought that I had in this episode of like everyone in the show just seems like they need to go to therapy. Like
Mhm.
like why is everyone in the show not
Yep.
in massive amounts of therapy? Like
That would make it too easy.
like well, I had that thought of like, well, yeah, Margaret doesn't need to be going to a bus terminal. She doesn't need to be arrested. She needs to go see a psychiatrist. She needs to.
Yep.
She needs a different coping mechanism that isn't this. You know, far be it for me to question Gabby's side share psychiatry, but let's move on to 911 season 8 episode 6 entitled Confessions. So I did not watch this
Yes.
episode, but I have seen much discussion about it online. So that's tell me about this episode.
Well, thank you. So glad you asked. Um this one is one of those situations where every once in a while 911 creates a episode title that really hits with everything about the episode. So there are confessions left and right throughout this episode. And some of them are silly, insignificant confessions. Some of them are confessions that should have been kept between two people instead of being blurted to the whole world. And some of them are very heavy and hard to bear, and some of them are just fun, you know? So it's like it was a very up and down, very nuanced episode. Um it had one of the most disgusting emergencies I've probably seen the show do. This man and woman were getting a divorce. They're in the divorce proceedings conference room, and this woman is yelling at him and telling the lawyers that every time he lies, he sneezes. She goes, so I know he's lying because he keeps sneezing. And I, in my head, am thinking, no, it's going to turn out that this sneezing is actually like an allergic reaction to something, blah, blah, blah. What it turns out to be that he sneezes so hard at one point that his incision scar from getting his appendix taken out bursts open and his guts fall out of his shirt.
Oh,
And it was very traumatizing of an emergency. And I was just like, oh my God, that's not where I thought that was going. Um, and then we have Maddie and Chim um, talking about having another kid. For those that aren't fully aware, 911, Maddie and Chim's daughter is currently like, I think 2 or 3. And they recently took in Mara, the foster child of their friend Henrietta, for a few months. And so now they're having this conversation that about how their daughter got used to having another kid around. And Maddie brings up the topic of maybe we could have another kid. They have a very serious discussion about what happened the last time Maddie was pregnant. She suffered from postpartum. She almost killed herself. She abandoned G. She ran off to Boston. Like a lot of negative things happened, but then Maddie tells Chim, I know you're worried. I'm worried too, but we're in a better place right now. We're more confident in who we are as parents. I think this could be a good thing for us. And we see Chim very, very hesitant until he does an emergency with two little kids, one getting stuck in a well. And he just sees the bond of brotherhood between these two little boys. And he goes home and he tells Maddie that he's like, you know what? I do think that G would be great as a sister. And he goes, I also think that you're already pregnant. And Maddie's like, oh, I was waiting for you to figure it out. She's like, I've been dropping these hints. I hoped you would figure it out. And so their confession wasn't like straight out, I'm pregnant. It was very much a beat around the bush, come to an acceptance of it, and then admit that that's really what's going on. So that was a fun confession. Then we've got Buck and Tommy. Apparently they've been dating for 6 months. Okay, time isn't real with this show. It is what it is. Because they got
Didn't they?
together at the beginning of season 7. So I'm
Yeah,
just
that's what
like,
I was thinking.
I, yeah, time doesn't make sense apparently on this show at this point. I'm like, all right, whatever, 6 months, fine. Tommy and him are on a date. This girl comes over and asks Buck if he would be willing to take a photo of her and her friends for her friend celebrating her divorce. And Buck is like, yeah, sure. But he's kind of giddy and flirty with this girl. And Tommy looks uncomfortable. And then that girl, after that whole situation dies down, Buck and Tommy sit there and talk. And Tommy's like, you know, it's fine if you find her attractive. Like, I get it. You're bisexual. And he's like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, it was just kind of weird and awkward that she asked us of all people. Like, Buck's just very uncomfortable, unsure of his what's going on in his feelings, which is totally normal for someone that is early on in their discovery of their sexuality. And then Tommy drops a bombshell that he used to be engaged. He's like, listen, I'm full out gay. I'm a Kinsey 6. He brought up the Kinsey scale, and I was like, oh my god, we're going old school at this point. And it really kind of showed his age, I felt, because he was like, I'm a Kinsey 6. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're older. And he mentions to Buck that he had a fiance previously, and he's like, her name was Abby Clark. Well, fun fact, Buck dated Abby Clark in season 1. And Abby had just come out of a very long relationship that went sour. And so Tommy's confessing that he had a fiance named Abby. He broke it off with her. And he said, and then she went crazy and dated a himbo half her age. And everyone that knows the show is like, oh my God, he's talking about Buck. He doesn't realize he's talking about Buck. When Buck finally tells him this is going to be such a mess, you know, whatever. So Buck starts to freak out. He goes to his sister and Josh, which is one of the other dispatchers, and he's asked for some advice. And Josh basically gives him this whole speech saying that, you know, guys like Tommy and I, who are older gays, grew up in a pre-Glee world, and you know, it wasn't as accepting, but you grew up in a post-Glee world, and you're coming out in a post-Glee world. And it's just like, I find it funny that this is a Ryan Murphy show,
Ryan
and they're
Murphy, shut the fuck up.
mentioning and they're mentioning another Ryan Murphy production. It is what it is. I didn't have a problem with his speech. I was a little like, why are we mentioning Glee of all things? Like, you could give this speech without mentioning Glee, but it is what it is. But Buck looks confused because he goes, I've never seen Glee. And then it's just like, okay, whatever. Maddie makes an inappropriate comment about, I wonder how many men Abby turned gay. But that's neither here nor there. Josh basically says to Buck, you need to decide, is this a deal breaker for you? Are you able to understand that he was with a woman? That's just how gay people did things back then. It's how we stayed safe, you know, blah, 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 all this stuff. And then finally towards the end of the episode, Buck has Tommy come over. He admits to Tommy that he also dated Abby. And then he pulls out his phone, which has a series of photos of his relationship with Abby. And it's like, bro, it was 8 years ago. You need to let that go, buddy. Like, take those pictures off your phone. Like, she destroyed your heart. Like, why is she still in your phone? Um, and that's when things kind of like turn off for Tommy, because you can see it in his face as Buck is admitting that he dated Abby and that he didn't realize that Abby's ex was his current squeeze. Like, he's like, I'm so sorry I wasn't honest with you, blah, blah, all this stuff. And we think that potentially it's going to get smoothed over, no big deal, whatever. But then Tommy says, you know what? I just don't think this is where our relationship. Oh, wait, before that, Buck goes, I'm all in. I really like you. Move in with me. This is Buck's go to when he freaks out about a relationship potentially slipping through his fingers. So, this is his like automatic crisis answering go to, right? Um, and Tommy literally looks at him and he goes, no, that's not where this relationship's going. He goes, you're freshly out of the closet. I'm out and proud. Um, it's a, he's like, I'm your first, but I'm not your last. And I can't continue this relationship knowing you're going to break my heart. And so he gets up and he goes to walk out, and Buck's like, wait, are you breaking up with me? And he's like, yeah, I think I am. So Buck and Tommy is no more. Oops, so sad. I'm just grieving so heavily for this relationship. Anyways, glad to have that actor off of this show, to be honest, because he's very oof. And the character was boring, so is what it is. And then we've got Eddie. This episode, Eddie has a conversation with a priest. He goes into the episode starts off with him going into a confessional booth and saying, it's been, he's like, oh, okay, how long has it been since your last confession? He's like, well, I haven't gone since middle school, so like 23 years. And we're just like, Jesus Christ, bro, like you are going way off the deep end at this point. Like your guilt is like eating you alive if you're stepping into a goddamn church. But it's a very interesting conversation. It's very quirky and slightly funny, but also serious at the same time. This priest character was heavily featured in season 1, so we know who he is. So it's like another callback to the first season of this show. And Eddie is talking to the priest and he says, I lost my son. He goes, oh, I'm so sorry. How old was your son? He goes, no, he's still alive. He just doesn't want to talk to me anymore. He lives in Texas, all this stuff. He goes, it's because he found me with his dead mother. And the look the priest gives through that screen in the confessional booth is like, he dead seriously thought Eddie meant that he had a corpse, like he was like dealing with a true dead body. And then Eddie admits, he's like, I know that sounds terrible. He's like, I started seeing this woman that looked exactly like my dead wife. And then the priest is kind of like, okay, cool. Because right before Eddie had said that his dead mother, he's like, it's fine, my son. You can confess anything to me. I've heard it all. And it's just like, I don't think you have, sir. But that the interactions with Eddie and the priest don't end there. Later on, we see Eddie at a juice bar, and he goes to pick up a bottle of juice, looks at it, goes to buy it, and then at the last second tells the cashier, no, actually, I just want to drink this water instead. So he puts the juice back and drinks water. There's some gay subtext that can be taken out of that. If you really want to deep dive into the fandom's feelings on gay Eddie, you can. But the priest happens to be right behind Eddie in line, sees Eddie put back the juice and drink the water instead. And so when he after he pays for his thing, he comes outside. Eddie's sitting at a table. He sits down with Eddie and he makes a comment, and Eddie's like, I'm straight. And the priest goes, and I'm celibate. So like it's clear that Eddie was thinking that the priest was flirting with him, when really he was just making a comment about Eddie struggling with something, right? and they have this conversation that's very heavy handed with queer coding about how Eddie's not allowing himself to just enjoy his life, to feel the joy that he deserves because he thinks that he needs to punish himself for all of his misdeeds and all the things that he's done wrong. And he said, and he goes, I think this mustache on your face is kind of a manifestation of that. And then he's like, you're right. I use it. He's like, I grew out a mustache because the LAFD doesn't allow beards. And it's like, okay, sir, that's very heavily queer coded. But then also, he's like, I grew the mustache because I wanted to hide who I was when I looked in the mirror. And so it's very heavy handed. There's a lot, I mean, a lot of people that don't want to see the queerness of it are going to just say, oh, it was just a conversation about a mustache. Whatever. Doesn't matter. By the end of the episode, we see Eddie at his house and he shaves off the mustache. And then he turns on old time rock and roll and does the risky business dance in his living room. And he's very happy. Like we see him, very joyful and giddy and wiggling on the couch and kicking his feet and just smiling and having a great time. And then the doorbell rings and it's Buck looking devastated, has a 6-pack of beer. He hands a beer to Eddie, already has his open, sits down on the couch. Eddie joins him and they don't say a word, fade to black. And it's like, I swear to God, if they don't give us Buck and Eddie canon at this point, I'm going to be so goddamn angry. Because it's so heavy handed. This episode was so heavy handed with allusions to Eddie not allowing himself to experience joy. And the moment he gets to his other thing that he's been denying himself shows up in the form of Buck. And they share a silent beer together. And he doesn't put pants on before he answers the door, by the way. He answers the door wearing just the shirt and underwear. And it's like, sir, you knew someone had just rang the doorbell. It could have been anybody, and you chose to go without pants on. Anyways, so that is the latest and the greatest with 911.
Well, all right. Let's move on to our last show of the week. Agatha All Along, Season 1, Episodes 8 and 9. Follow me, my friend, to glory at the end and Maiden Mother Crone. I found this to be pretty underwhelming.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
a lot of people, there's been a lot of discourse about the show in the 2 weeks since this came out. And I find it really hard to disagree with the notion that the show about Agatha ended up just being Agatha being the sidekick to the, you know, the male character who's going to be able to go forward from this point,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I'm having a really hard time not letting that be my my opinion on this, because I think that's very accurate. I think a lot of the Agatha and Rio stuff is really underbaked, and I get that. Jack Schaefer, the creator of this, has talked about that, and how they really underestimated the extent that people would go ham.
Yeah.
They're like, we just have Aubrey Plaza. People are going to think that's cool, and I do sympathize with that. I do get that of like not quite understanding what the reception to this relationship would end up being.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard to really predict that the internet would go this ham over for Agatha and Rio. But even still, there's a lot of that being left on the table. You know,
Yeah, and I found like the finale felt very flat, and I felt like I kept constantly checking the time left on the episode, which to me tells me I'm not engaged enough in the story. I'm worried about how much time is left that I have to endure this. And I'm like, that's not a good thing.
no,
Um and I was like, I feel like some of this information that was presented in the finale could have been presented earlier in the season. Like I don't understand why it was left to the last second.
right? I think it wanted a lot. A lot of this is the show wants this to be like the last minute twist. You know, but I don't know. Like the idea that Billy created this all, created the road.
Mhm.
I don't think it works. I don't know. There's something about that where I'm like, I don't know. It just doesn't fit. I get it. Like, I get what we're doing, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that it's not the show hasn't done anything to really demonstrate that Billy has this capability, right? The show has demonstrated that Billy can read people's minds, and there's a certain uh, telekinesis, but this like
Mhm.
full out like just creation the way that Wanda did. I don't know. Like the show hasn't done that work, so it feels like a reveal for the sake of there being a reveal. Yeah, so I don't think it really works. A lot of this just, as I said, makes Agatha into a second player of her own show, where a lot of the emphasis could have been more strongly on, Agatha and Rio, which is just an infinitely more
Yeah.
interesting dynamic and relationship. And at the end, we
Right.
just don't get a lot of them. Like, and we don't know what their
Mm-mm.
relationship looks like. We don't know what they've, you know, what their arc really is beyond Rio took her son.
Right.
So it all becomes really underwhelming, and I don't care about Billy's brother. I don't care about that
Mhm.
kid. I barely care about Billy.
Right, and I feel like again, this whole looking for his brother thing, if they really wanted it to be a significant thing, which they made it seem so in the final 3 episodes, they should have given it more time than just the final 3 episodes.
Right? Does does nothing for like the search for Billy. I don't care. I just don't care.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Like the show expects me to be like, well, we saw them in WandaVision. I didn't think anything in WandaVision was real, so I didn't care.
Mhm.
I didn't know these two kids were going to become a part of this universe.
Yeah.
I do like that Jen is not just out there being a witch again, and you know sets it up to do like Midnight Suns and all that. And it's like that's fun, that's cool. The rest is just deeply, I don't know.
We speak of Ryan Murphy earlier. It felt like a Ryan Murphy ending, and I was just like, I don't like this.
No, no,
It like lost steam, and I'm like, this show started out so strong, so good, and then it just lost it all.
yeah, yeah. And also, like, I don't know that like I like the idea of Agatha made up the road as a way to steal to steal witches' powers. Like I like that as a kind of abstract idea, but in practice, it just makes me go, okay, but like no one in all of the times that Agatha did this just decided to punch her in the face. Like not one,
Right. Exactly.
not a single time. So like I can't escape that thought. I also think that's just like a really shaky kind of mechanic.
Hmm.
Because like we saw Billy do that same thing, and then he survived because it stopped. And it's like, where's that line? Where's that draw? And it doesn't know. It's all wibbly wobbly, magicy bullshit. Which I think ultimately it's like where a lot of this falls down on. It's like I don't know. It's you know to go with the Wizard of Oz motif. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right. Exactly.
It's kind of like here's a question. Does this fall into bury your gays?
I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's in that really weird area. I think it does fall just enough and over the line. Uh, something I was thinking about of like historically a big part of like bury your gays is yes, it's affecting and making the other side of the lesbian relationship really sad, but it's also done in order to like motivate a male character. You know, kind of
Hmm.
historically, which is like where a lot of this whereas a lot of its function. Not every time a gay character dies is that barrier gays, but I think in this case, yes. That is it for this week. Next week we are going to be talking about the return of Arcane, which I am very eagerly waiting for. Until then, Mads, where can we find you online?
You can find me. For now, you can still find me on Twitter at Dorothy NYC 89, mostly because that's where I post my reviews for right now. But I'm also getting back into the swing of Blue Sky, so you can find me there at Dorothy NYC 89. You can also find me on Instagram at Dorothy NYC 89.
And you can find me on Blue Sky at Drew Koenig got bluesky.social, and everywhere else at Drew Koenig. Um, you can follow the podcast on all your social media platforms at Not Another TV Podcast. And you can email us at Not Another TV Podcast at gmail.com with any thoughts, comments, or questions you may have about the show. Um, you can find previous episodes of the podcast on Apple and Spotify, along with whatever other podcasting device you use. Be sure to leave us a review and subscribe. Every little bit helps. You can find our full library on our Libsyn feed at libsyn.com/not another TV podcast. Until next week, please remember, don't go in the ocean um, unless you can send a billionaire down there. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.